All right, good morning. Uh, Part one of a two-part series on our economics and global impact. These are the last two lectures for this semester for civics. Today I'm going to be moving really quickly through this to give you the high points, so let's get going. When looking at global and international business, we have to look at understanding a few things that are coming up on our radar, which first and foremost is the circle flow model. When businesses are trying to set up their plans for the future and their plans for um, how to become more profitable, we have to understand that there is a interrelationship between the consumer, aka the person who is at home buying on Amazon, the factory worker, the business itself, and the government. And when it comes down to it, there is a flow of goods and services between each and every one of us. From the household, you have the homeowner who wants to buy goods. They want to buy goods. And to do that, the homeowner needs money. To be able to make money, homeowners, people get jobs. We go work for those businesses, and because of our labor that we are giving them, they thus give us wages. Our wages then we use to buy products. Also, the factory itself considers its employees as part of a factor of production. So you've got human beings going to work as part of the manufacturing process, aka the products cannot be made without us. If we are not there to produce the products, thus the products will not be produced. So we are part of the supply that businesses need. So they need people to come and work for them. So they need us to come work for them to make the products in which they turn about and sell to us. Um, so this is a circle of flow. Our factors of production, aka the goods slash labors slash raw materials, go into the factory. Um, Out of it comes the goods and our pay, which we use to buy those goods that keep the circular chart moving around and around. So as you can see here, you have factors of production, which are the products that are needed. Not only does the household provide the market for them to sell their products, but we also determine what products will be made. AKA, if you make a product I don't like, I won't buy it. So we are determining the production of goods, what goods will be produced by our needs and wants. And then those goods and services are produced by the factory to be sold to the homeowner. The homeowner wishes to buy them, so we need to, go to work. So we basically put ourselves into the businesses, and then in turn would pay us money, which we use to buy those goods and services. So there is a interrelationship. When you are looking at circle flow charts, there's also a lot of interpartnership that we need to understand between different types of businesses. There are four types of businesses in the world. When we are looking at is proprietorships, partnerships, corporations, and franchises. So anybody that wants to get into business for themselves, this is something you need to understand. The proprietorships are basically the idea that you are going to get involved. Wait a second, too far. The proprietorships are the individual owner of the business. Partnerships are just what they sound like. One or more, or two or more people own a business. Corporations are when businesses go public and are sold on the stock market, and you have stockholders. You have a board. I mean, you may have the inventor or the original owner of the business involved in it, but now it is owned by the public. Franchises are another awesome way, and we'll talk more about them later. But franchises are pretty cool because we talk about them in a way that this is a way that a private owner can buy into a big, huge company and set up their own franchise, or AKA store of that company. The best one probably out there is McDonald's. Most of your McDonald's are owned by franchises. That means a private individual living in your community has bought the rights to own a McDonald's store. They own the store, they sell the products, it is their employees, it is their money to make. Now, how do they get to carry the name McDonald's? Well, they agree with the McDonald's company to sell their products, to buy only the goods and products in which that company is selling, and to make sure that they are in step with the McDonald's vision. So when they decide to put out the new McRib, all McDonald's throughout the country suddenly start selling the McRib. To ensure that every McDonald's produces the same product, they buy their products, aka hamburgers, fries, McRib meat, whatever, from the McDonald's Corporation. How does the McDonald's Corporation make money? First and foremost, they sell the franchises to the individual who sets up their own store. Two, they also sell all the goods that are needed to run the store. Everything from the t-shirts the employees wear to the fries that the customer eats is provided by the home company. So franchises are an interesting mix of independent ownership, but linked with a major corporation that determines the production of the product. One other cool factor is every so often, if you want a really good McDonald's meal, there are training stores that are actually owned by the mother company. So how do you find a corporate McDonald's versus a franchise McDonald's? A corporate McDonald's, you can always tell them because outside they have 4 flagpoles outside, and on the flagpoles will be the state flag, the flag of the United States, obviously, and on either side of those will be a flag of McDonald's. These stores are set up regionally. There's probably one every few hundred square miles, and they are set up in order to train managers and people who are working in the franchise. So if you were to buy a franchise, you would go to one of these uh, corporate-owned McDonald's in order to see how you should manage it, what's expected, how to make the products, so forth and so on. So they're sort of like training centers. But they are guaranteed to probably have the best food, the best accommodations, because they have to hold a high standard because they are the training area for managers and stuff in the area. So anytime you see a McDonald's with 4 flags out front, that's pretty much going to be the best one you can go to. Now, franchisees, I will say that not all franchise owners are created equal. If you do not keep your franchise up to date, in other words, remodel your store often enough, and don't maintain good order, the company can actually come in and take back the franchise in case you bring down the name of the restaurant. There's probably a long process in order to strip a franchise of their ownership, but it is possible for them to protect the good name of the industry, to take away ownership of a franchise away from someone who doesn't manage it properly. But anyway, if you want to make a lot of good money, franchise owners are an awesome way to get into business. And honestly, because it is supported by this major corporation, they really do well. They don't fail, but you don't have a lot of individual creative ability. You basically sign that you're going to do it the McDonald's way. You may own the store, but you're doing it McDonald's style. So franchises are kind of cool, but you do have to follow their guidelines and their rules and regulations, even though you own the store. So kind of interesting setup. Let's keep going. When talking about businesses, recognize that businesses have a whole lot of cycles. And in business, you're going to study graphs. You're not only going to study the circle flow chart. The circle flow chart is awesome for helping you to understand where you are losing production. But there's also other types of charts that you'll be looking at. Business cycle charts help you get an idea of how your business is doing over a very long period of time. This helps you understand the future, or to predict the future of your business. Every business goes through growths. This is where you see the productivity and the amount of money in which a business makes go up for a while. Then it'll eventually reach a certain level, and then that's called a peak. Then eventually a you will see a drop in production, which is known as a recession. If it falls below a certain level, you would call this a depression. This is an area of time in your business in which it is not doing very well. The good news is if you have hit final bottom, there's nowhere to go up but back up. So usually businesses go through cycles where we grow for a while, peak, then we'll see a little slacking off, and that'll eventually cause a trend of recession, aka it may be your business loses popularity, or the products that you're selling may hit a certain slump. And eventually you will get to a point where you recognize that you need to change something. That may be remodel your store, change products, do an overhaul, or whatever the case may be. You'll eventually get to the point where you recognize that either you got to sell or change. The good news is when you make changes, this also sparks public interest, and suddenly people start coming back to your business. So once again, you start going back up in growth. And then, of course, eventually that levels out again. As we look over time, the trend that we wish to see is that it will continuously move upwards. Even with its ups and downs, the line itself gradually moves upwards, which means your business is successful. Yes, it has ups and downs, but overall, over time, your business is successful. That means it's sustainable. Also, by judging this line and how you are moving, it can help you predict the next recession or the next depression in your business, and will allow you to make changes in order to minimize those things from happening as often or as long. Notice that this recession lasted a very long time and hit a very low depression point. However, this time, when it hit a recession point and a depression, the line was much shorter and the depression was much less. So, in other words, they learned from the first recession how to minimize the second recession and how to turn it around. So, this, if studied properly, can help you grow your business. Understand the market is sort of like playing Monopoly. In order to be successful, there has to be several things available for you to understand how you're going to present your business. First and foremost, a sole provider of a variable product and service. Here's the thing: if you own the manufacturing to something extremely unique that no one else does, then you have control over that product. A lack of close, suitable choices may allow for customers to choose from. So if you don't have uh, a competition, you can hold a monopoly over products. Also, high barriers to entry into the market. In order for major manufacturers, let's take one that everybody loves, automobiles. We have several major American automobile companies. Now, there are literally hundreds of automobile makers in the world. But for the United States, we have basically Ford, Chevrolet, aka GMC, General Motors, and Dodge. These are the three big manufacturers of automobiles in America. Now, how do they have a monopoly? Well, there are barriers put on the entry of other products. Without it, uh, Toyota, Honda, Kia, Hyundai, all those Asian-made manufacturers would put our businesses out of business. So there has been barriers set up, aka tariffs and taxes put on import cars in order to maintain the monopoly of the American-made cars. In America, most people own an American-made car. Even though Toyota and Honda and other Asian companies hold a huge share, they are not competing on an equal playing field with the big three. So there you go. Um, Also recognize that monopolies can exist in all sorts of forms. It could be a monopoly over cable or television or internet or cell phone service. If the only cell phones that work in your area that you live, aka Verizon, then Verizon for this area can pretty much charge whatever they want to because you don't have any choices of other phone services. However, if there is another choice, then that develops competition, which keeps prices reasonable. Just recognize that monopolies are awesome for the owners of the companies, but they suck for the individual who has to buy from a monopoly because honestly, you don't have a choice. Oligopies. Oligopies. A good example of this is, of course, the cell phone industry. This is when leading manufacturers in the United States, such as AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile, they basically control the market and are capable of conglomerating. This is where you see one of these big companies buy out another company in order to develop a stronger hold on the market. Verizon controls about 20% of the cell phone market in the world. AT&T and Sprint also control about 20%. T-Mobile and some other talk uh, phone and some other companies control the remaining 20%. By being able to control large shares of the market, it is in a way a monopoly because they often work together in order to raise prices slowly, but together in order to maximize the amount of money in which they are able to make. So back in the day when I first bought my first cell phone, it cost about $30 a month for me to have a cell phone. Last time I looked at our cell phone bill, now there's four phones on my plan, but it's over $200. So in the last 30 years, I'm now paying, if not double, close to it, to what I was 20 years ago when I got my first cell phone. This is because the industry has slowly raised the price of cell phone service over the last 20 years. So that's something to think about. Outsourcing. Outsourcing is whenever you decide to stop producing a product inside your own country and you decide to outsource it, aka send it to another place in order for it to be made. Now we have been outsourced to a large uh, percentage in the last 40 years in this area of North Carolina. Case in point, used to be almost all the furniture that you would buy before, say, 1990 was made here in the United States and was made right here in North Carolina at the capital of the furniture industry, where you could find furniture factories and textile mills located everywhere. However, Because of lowering trade embargoes and taxes barriers into our market, companies found that it was cheaper to produce that product in a foreign country. So today, most of the furniture in which we buy at the store for our homes is made in Asia, China, Thailand. I actually just bought some bookcases the other day, and they were made in Thailand. I will say that they were pretty good quality bookcases, but they were manufactured in another country because an employee in Thailand will work all day long for $10, whereas an employee at a furniture factory here in North Carolina would want $10 to $20 an hour. So when you consider that for every single employee here in America, you can hire a dozen employees in another country. So, and shipping costs are not that much. Even though they have to ship the product here back to the United States to sell, it's actually still cheaper to make it in Thailand or in China or in Singapore or wherever it is that they decide to outsource that product to. One of my favorite ones for this is Fender guitars. I love guitars. You guys know this because I like to play music. Um, but Fender Guitar Company used to make all of their guitars in Corona, California. Now, Corona, California, their plant in Corona, California, became their flagship production facility, where now they only make their professional American top-of-the-line models. The average model that is being made for Fender is actually made in Mexico, about 100 miles away from the old plant in California, just across the border in Mexico. Why? Because it is cheaper to produce in Mexico and then bring it into the United States across the border than it is to make it in the United States. So I actually own a bunch of Mexican-made Fenders. The reason being is that they are very, very similar to the ones made in America, but they're half the price. I would love to own an American-made Fender guitar, but they usually cost anywhere between $1,500 and $2,000 for a standard American-made version. That being said, I can buy a version that looks almost identical, made in Mexico, for anywhere between 500 and $1,000. So virtually half price of what it would be made in the United States. Fender also has a line that is made even further away in Asia, which is their basic or very entry-level guitar. They're made in Indonesia, that's just below Vietnam and Thailand, on a string of islands. This line of Fender guitar is known as the Squire series, and most of them are made in Indonesia today. Um, those particular guitars, modeled on the ones that are made in the United States, just like the ones that are made in Mexico, but they are mass produced in Asia with cheaper made parts. And these, even though they look exactly like the ones made in America and exactly like the ones made in Mexico, they are anywhere between $100 and $500 in value. So, you're getting an Asian built one, and it's basically half price of the Mexican versions, which is half price of the American version. Um, this is a case where the company, in order to meet the demand of the market and to reach all the levels of availability for people, depending on how much money they wish to spend, they outsourced the production. So after 1980, you start seeing models being made all over the world, whether it be made in Mexico, Japan, Indonesia, so forth and so on, in order to meet the demand at lower prices. So, American-made products are great because they generally represent the highest of quality, but not everybody can afford the price tag that comes with an American-made one. And it's directly related to the amount of money in which you are going to pay your employees. American employees make more money an hour than, say, an employee in Mexico, and a Mexican employee makes, twice what or three times what a person in Indonesia makes. So this determines the cost of the product greatly. And it also makes a difference in the availability, but it also makes a difference in the quality. I would like to say that the bases that I have that are made in Mexico, they are beautiful and they play very, very well. Um, but they're not American made, and the quality is good, but it is not perfect. If I bought one made in America, I would expect for the quality to be perfect. And if it was not, I would send it back and demand that it be perfect for the price that you're paying for an American version. However, I'm perfectly okay with it not being exactly perfect. So I like what I have, but unless somebody wants to give me a whole lot of money, I don't guess I'll ever have the American version. What also causes people to want to outsource? Well, the United States has what is referred to as labor unions. Labor unions were developed around 1900 and really took full swing in the 1920s, 30s, 40s. Even going into the 1950s, labor unions really made a change in the American economy. The reason being is that businesses during the American Industrial Revolution that happened before and during and after World War I and World War II, you saw big manufacturers of product often abusing their employees, not providing them with health benefits, retirement, safety, security in their job. A lot of times the products or factories were being produced in a dangerous way. And in order to protect the individual worker that was helping drive the American economy, labor unions joined together. This is when the employees form a group in order to negotiate for better wages, safer working environment, and a bit of security within their business. Before labor unions, if you didn't show up to work, or if there was a medical emergency, or you got sick, you just got fired. So employees wanted to say, I've worked for a company for 20, 30 years and I got sick. I don't feel like that I should be fired just because that happens. Somehow there should be some protection in there to protect my job so that I can keep my job if something happens to me. That was developed by labor unions. They basically negotiated requirements from the business in order to protect the workers. Today, labor unions are not as popular as they once were, but they have been the driving force behind wage increases, retirement benefits, and safety standards for generations. So there's a lot here that is really, really, really important. I will say this, that it is one of the reasons why a lot of businesses left the United States in the 1990s when taxes and stuff like that were dropped. So a lot of businesses left the United States and moved their production facilities to Mexico or Asia or wherever it was that they moved, because the cost of labor unions in the United States basically drove those businesses away. So labor unions are good, but they can have a bad effect if the government doesn't protect them as well. And that is what we've seen in the last 25, 30 years as we have developed world trade agreements. We have lost a lot of ability to protect our labor unions, thus not protecting our workers here in the United States, which is one of the reasons why so many people lost their jobs in the 1990s and early 2000s. One of my favorites in history of labor organizers was Maud. Maud here, up here, this little old lady, was a uh, labor union organizer, excuse me, during the coal wars in West Virginia. Uh, this happened in the early 1910, 1908, somewhere in that neighborhood, circa, uh, give or take 3 or 4 years, where coal companies risked the lives of their employees in the coal mines. And because of the Industrial Revolution, they were literally being worked to death, and people were dying on the job from basically rushing too quickly to build the economy and to, of course, get that coal out of the ground. A lot of workers were being injured and dying. Because of this, the workers eventually got to the point where they felt like it was too unsafe to work, and they were being abused by the coal companies that not only owned the mine, but they often owned the town in which the people lived in. Matter of fact, today, if you travel to West Virginia and visit a coal mining town, you'll see the town and the houses and the stores and stuff from the old coal companies, where they literally owned the buildings in which the people workers lived in. They owned the store, and they didn't even pay them in American money. They paid them in what was referred to as company scrip, which is basically a company produced money that could only be used at the company store, aka grocery store. And they used that money to pay their company rent for their apartments or their homes. Um, the thing was is that if you didn't like what the company did, you could become homeless really quickly. Or if you were injured, or if your husband was killed, you might find yourself without a place to live because the company would kick you out. Because of this, the coal miners in West Virginia revolted and refused to go to work. It's called a strike. And they decided to form a union in order to force the coal companies to negotiate higher wages, safer working conditions, and more protections for the employees so that the workers could do their job, but also at the same time provide better lives for their families, also with security. Uh, because of this, the coal companies tried to bring in what were referred to as scab workers. These were workers from Pennsylvania that they tried to bring in on the railroads to take the place of the coal miners. The coal miners, because they weren't working, were kicked out of their homes. So they set up a tent village, which is over here. You can see the tent village. Now, what's really cool about these tents is that the tents look deceiving. The coal company brought in Pinkerton thugs. These were railroad guards. These were thugs are us, and gave them guns. And fighting between the coal miners and the security guards working for the coal company got into shooting matches. And because of that, a lot of times bullets would fly through the camp, shooting up the tents. In order to protect their children and wives, the coal miners dug the floors out of the tents. So when you see a tent here, when you went inside, you actually climbed down a ladder about 6 feet down into the ground, so that when bullets went flying through the tent, it was over the heads of their wife and children who were safely below ground. So they were out of basically in a foxhole, if you will, so that they wouldn't be hit by a stray bullet. But anyway, she negotiated and became sort of the matriarch of the coal miners who were revolting. Interesting story is that inside that fancy dress that she's wearing, she carried an old Civil War revolver with about an 8-inch barrel, great big huge revolver, which they said that she would shoot you just to look at you, and that she was the worst cusser in the entire community. So anybody that messed with her, she would either shoot them or cuss them. But anyway, she was a powerful, powerful force. And eventually she will travel to Charleston, West Virginia, to the capital, and to beg the governor. And eventually she will beg the President of the United States to intercede, and the President of the United States will eventually send troops. Teddy Roosevelt, a former President of the United States, will also aid in the negotiations in order to bring an end to the violence between the coal miners and the mining company. So, powerful, powerful story there. Check it out. It's pretty cool. Y'all should learn some more about it. All right, let's talk about gross domestic product. Gross domestic product is a term we use to understand how much money, or AKA product, value of product, the United States produces in a year. So when we talk about our yearly gross domestic product, how much money in product sales did the United States export or produce this year versus how much we imported this year? Uh, these are generally numbers in which people want to know. We want to see that our gross domestic product continues to go up and not down. When looking at the stock market is a graphing system in which we can determine the factors of how strong our market is. By judging the market and looking at it over time, we can determine how we're doing from one year to the next. Looking at the factors of production, you can often see how the free market economy is working, and this is often influenced by government policies. It can also be influenced by the feelings of America, or how certain or how good America is feeling about the market. If the President of the United States comes out on the news and tells the world that America is strong and America is doing great, and he puts in new policies to strengthen the economy, then you will see that same day a rise in the stock market. On the other hand, if the president comes out and tells the world about a natural disaster, or something like COVID-19 happening, you can see the market plummet that day as people lose confidence in America's ability to make money. So it is a heartbeat of America, if you will, as we can see the up and down movement of how people, not only in the United States but around the world, feel about our economy or our potential to make money. Economic indicators that we often use to determine a lot of different things, especially in our economy. Employment levels. Right now, we're looking at about 20% unemployment. We haven't seen unemployment at this level since the Great Depression. Since COVID-19 has shut down the country, it has caused a major, major influence in our economy. The question will be is how long will it take us to bounce back from it, and when will it end? Unemployment insurance. Companies have to carry unemployment insurance in order to make sure that people don't starve to death. So fortunately, most people who lost their jobs are able to get unemployment checks. Right now, the government is guaranteeing $600 a week. I actually know a guy who is making more money on unemployment right now than he did when he was working, because the government has set those minimum standards in order to keep Americans from losing their homes and from people filing bankruptcy. So in order to keep us from falling into a Great Depression because of all this job loss, the unemployment insurance and unemployment payments that we are receiving right now is protecting our individual employees out there. So the good news is that people are managing to weather this unemployment for now, and we'll have to see how long it takes people to get back to work, how long before the payments run out. So we've got a lot of things that are up in the air, but the good news is that we are slowly opening the country back up right now. And that means people are going to be able to get jobs again, and hopefully that unemployment rate will begin to decrease. We'll drop back down to 3 or 5% like we were prior to the COVID-19. Real estate and housing price index. This is how much houses and land is being sold for in America. This is a good indicator of the strength of the country. When I first bought my home 25 years ago, I paid about $40,000 for it. In the last 25 years, my house has doubled in value. My home is worth about $90,000. That being said, uh, by judging how the property values and housing rates are, how many people are buying houses, how much those houses are being sold for, how much did they originally sell for years ago when they were originally made, by being able to graph all that, you can see the value of a home and this value of land in an area. If a town is dying, you'll see the value of homes and the value of land drop. Maybe the factory or the business that was there that got people to come there has closed or ended, or maybe there has been a natural disaster that has made that area not worth living or less desirable to live in. Things like that may make people think about uh, the value there. But overall, we can graph these things and help determine the health of our country by looking at how things are being sold and how much they're being sold for. Consumer Price Index, aka where are we putting our money? When looking at a personal person or a nation, you can determine how we are doing by determining what our living costs. Where do we put our money? And this also helps drive our economy. A lot of companies and businesses try to do a consumer price index in order to figure out where to put their next investment. Notice here that other goods and services make up a lot of 3.2%. However, you have housing coming in at 42%. Most of us put 42% of our income into housing. Now, that's not just the mortgage or the rent. That's including your power bill, utilities, the things that are associated with the home. So for me, that would be my internet bill, my phone bill, my power bill, my water bill, taxes, tags, uh, state and federal, county, city taxes, all rolled up into one, and my mortgage plus insurance, all tied up. So making about 42% of a budget. Whereas food, notice food's coming in here at 15%. And transportation, a lot of people spend a lot of money on cars. Because I commute, I do spend a lot of money on cars. Right now, I'm a little over $1,000 a month in car payments. However, good news for me is come September, I'll be down to only like $325. Yay, extra money. So cool. I'm going to actually have a car paid off then. But notice where people are putting their money. By doing this, we can often determine goods and services in which consumers are wishing to have. We know that people want to buy cars. Well, the car manufacturing industry is a good place in order to invest. Okay? So is food. Food and beverages. People like to eat and people need food. So yay. Things like that. Medical care. The medical industry is another big hitter on the economy. So we can do a whole lot with these types of graphs, understanding the economy. Let's talk about the Federal Reserve and monetary policies. The United States government protects the Federal Reserve. It's a central banking system of the United States. It is controlled by the United States government, but it is not a part of the United States government. The Federal Reserve sounds like it must be part of the United States government, but it's not. It's actually an independent contracting company that takes care of our money. It's actually owned by a bunch of bankers in Germany, and they are in charge of the Federal Reserve. They have the ability to influence the supply of money and credit. The President of the United States can request for them to release more money or to give an update. However, they are an independent company and thus are not required by federal law in order to do what they feel is necessary. They supervise and regulate financial institutions throughout the United States in order to make sure that the American dollar stays strong. The bank has U.S. government agents that spend a lot of time making sure that goods and services and that the economy is doing well. They supply services and to the public through the depository institutions, aka banks, and they often take care of ensuring local and small state banks within the United States in order to maintain stability. Um, Basically, this is a contracted out part of our government that makes sure that our economy and the American dollar stay strong. National debt. National debt is the amount of money, GDP, that we make each year versus the amount of money in which we spend in the United States. As you can see, the national debt is calculated here in red. And then you have the amount in which we actually make is in black. What is best is, like here you can see, between 1998 and 2002, you have a large amount of money being brought in to the United States government, and we weren't spending as much. Just so you guys recognize this, this is the only period in history since World War II that this happened. What actually happened? Well, I know that a lot of people don't like Bill Clinton, but during Bill Clinton's presidency, he balanced the budget and cut a lot of spending on national debt. So for a period of time there at the end of his presidency and at the beginning of George Bush's presidency, you saw the United States government spending less and making more. And because of this, it was the only time since World War II we've seen the national debt, the amount of money in which we owe the world, actually go backwards. We were beginning to pay back money instead of adding to the debt that we owe. So what brought an end to that? Well, we all know what happened in 2001 with 9/11. When 9/11 happened, we went to war in 2002, and very quickly the surplus that we had changed as we went into war. As we began spending more and more money fighting wars in other countries, we have spent more than we brought in, and that number has continued to grow. Also, in 2008, notice you have giant jumps here in 2008 and 2009. What happened? Well, this was the induction of President Obama. As President Obama became President of the United States, he rolled out new plans in order to improve life in the United States, which a lot of these things, like Obamacare and other plans to try to improve the economy of the United States and to try to bring an end to the war. By the way, I also want to point out that in 2008, we started not only fighting in Iraq, but we began fighting in Afghanistan. So we didn't end up with one war, we ended up with two wars, which drastically caused this line to jump. So with increased spending for public services in the United States and increased spending at the military war front, as we began fighting in multiple countries in the Middle East, the amount of money in which the United States government was spending doubled, if not tripled, during this period of time. So you see a tremendous amount of debt growth. By looking at the amount of money in which we owe, it has reached seriously high numbers. I will say that the number today is not $4 trillion, We are now at $7 trillion. So we've almost doubled that amount since uh, in the last 5 years. Uh, so what do we need to know about all of this? Well, income inequality and poverty, and how can we fix it? Well, the old saying is the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And in no other country in the world is that more true than in the United States. So how do we deal with that? How can we fix it to where every American has the ability to make a lot of money or make more money? Well, there are entitlement programs. These are government programs that guarantee certain benefits to particular groups and segments of the population in order to make sure that everybody has the same access to a future here in America. We have set up a lot of programs and a lot of laws in order to make sure that women are making the same amount as men in the workplace, and that minority groups have the same opportunities to go to college and to be able to get the benefits of a better education, or the opportunities to make sure that people get a chance to get a job, and that the job would be based upon merit, aka you deserve that job, not just because you were born to your neighbors, or your dad was friends with the owner of the company, kind of thing. The government does this through laws and regulations, but they also do it through Social Security to make sure that people have a retirement plan, Medicare and Medicaid, a insurance program, and Obamacare to make sure that people are insured and have access to public health. Unemployment benefits, which a lot of people in America are taking advantage of right now, as they are able to continue to pay their bills thanks to uh, government checks and programs that are helping them not lose everything during COVID-19. All of this is done in order to make sure that America continues to prosper. All right. That ends our lecture for today. Tomorrow we're going to tackle world trade, and we're going to talk about the effect of a lot of those world trade negotiations and things, and how they are affecting the market here in the United States, and how are they affecting our lives as American citizens and our chances of getting future jobs. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. I hope you guys have a blessed day, and tomorrow will be our last lecture, Global Economy. Have a great day, guys. Talk to you later.